Hey Alex, super great to have you on board.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. Yeah.
It's a pleasure. It's always great to be able to talk to someone who has an international background and talk about natural wine. So, what is your perception of the new wave of the Italian natural wine? How do you feel about it?
Well, I mean, in this moment in particular, there are so many very interesting young winemakers starting their craft. They're initiating. Maybe they're not coming from a background of, a grandfather that made wine for 100 years or something like this, but through passion and research and maybe studying at enology school and learning what to and what not to do, they're starting to really branch out into picking old varieties, autochthonous varietals and old fermentation techniques. So I think it's a very fascinating moment for natural wine in Italy in general.
So do you think that like the American market is actually picking up the real DNA of the new movement, so they do really understand what is happening in Italy right now?
I mean, more or less. I mean, I think there's a premonition. Like they can, I think some people understand, especially people that have traveled in Italy or maybe that are working on the importing side. But even still, there's not really like a big discussion past, a classic, more popular Italian varietals like Sangiovese, etc. I think that there's certain shops and importers that are focusing in on it, but it's not necessarily coming into full picture quite yet. But
for how many years have you been traveling around Italy and visiting all the wineries and regions and wine regions?
For about 3 years now. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, 2.5, 3 years. Yeah.
Yes, I imagine you visit so many wineries and so many areas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which are some of your favorite?
That's a great question. I'm really fond of like the Alcamo and Trapani provinces. Okay. Yeah, it's very exciting things happening there. Also, I'm very passionate about Veneto in general.
Okay.
Like everything from like in the Vicenza Hills right now. That's quite popular. There's a lot of very interesting things happening, as well as the Colli Euganei. Lots of very interesting winemakers kind of taking foot there, or maybe people that haven't been doing it for a long time as well. But
I think it's super interesting how a region does. Everyone has kind of like the feeling it's quite industrial in the winemaking, but today is displaying totally the opposite.
Absolutely, yeah. You mean Veneto, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that kind of pings off a little bit of the history of Marsala wine tradition, for example, as well, and Trapani. So those are the kind of like the regions that I found myself most interested in, are the ones that were renowned for having this industrialization, however, have this kind of grassroots movement of winemakers kind of revitalizing the traditions.
Do you have a favorite type of grape that you really, really love, or you like more like blends?
Right now I'm really crazy about Vespaiola, let's see exactly, the Braganze. I mean, and of course, Pinot Nero is classic, Nebbiolo. I'm even though I'm very excited about all this, the revolution of autochthonous varietals, I still kind of have a place in my heart for Nebbiolo.
I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's really impossible to deny Nebbiolo. But I think that probably one of the great aspects of Italy is that you can blend both the really important grapes with the really traditional without actually denying none of them.
True. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we could say probably that Veneto is one of your favorite winemaking regions in Italy, beside the south, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, also because I think that it's kind of, I think internationally it's not recognized as much as a, there's this big trend right now, I mean, and for many years on volcanic wines. Yeah. And of course people are talking about Soave, which is a great wine region as well, obviously. However, I feel like all of this volcanic activity in that region really lends its part to incredible minerality and complexity in the wines, and I feel like it's a bit underappreciated in comparison to fantastic regions like Etna or Pantelleria and stuff like this. So hopefully that continues to
kind of
build.
Like I don't want to say the underdog, but sometimes everyone talks about Etna, everyone talks about Vesuvio, Pantelleria, and it's kind of hard to focus. But I also love the idea that volcanoes kind of like connect the world. You can find wines from different areas totally that connect on some characteristics, especially the minerality, thanks just to the volcanic soil. Are you more into like sparkling wines or still wines?
Well, by the selections we made today, it might seem that way, but I'm really a big fan of skin contact white wines.
Okay.
So like maybe wines with some extended maceration, but typically white wines with this. I don't want to say amber or orange, but you get what I mean. Yeah, yeah.
So it's a traditional white wine.
There you go. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
okay.
I like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
remember.
it's a good way to see it. So you do like a little bit of the tannic structure in even on the white wine when it's kind of like really light.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the first natural wines that I found myself passionate about was the Ribolla from Grabner and the wines of Radicon and the Gorizia region in general. So that's kind of where my heart is in that sense. Yeah.
I find that let's call them orange wines today are going more into the direction of being traditional whites.
Yeah.
So they're lighter.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I want an orange wine, but something I can drink.
Yeah, sometimes the orange wines tend to be more of a meditation wine.
In fact, yeah.
Complex, amazing. But, while the traditional whites are more easy to drink and you can just enjoy a talk like we're doing right now. And we always need to remember that wine is actually about talking. So,
in fact,
and sharing. So in US right now, what are the favorite varieties and the favorite wine regions, the Italian wine regions, of course, that people are talking about?
People are still crazy about Etna, as we were mentioning before. You know, that's kind of, Frank Cornelissen and these other producers from the region have really popularized the region quite a bit. Sicily in general, of course, right? However, I have noticed a more of a group of people kind of focusing on Umbria and Lazio right now as kind of an exciting wine region. Especially from Lago Bolsena. It's like a very popular, especially in natural wine. There's so many producers, starting from when Lacoste, started making wine there. It's becoming this this exciting region for Americans. I think there's also a big passion for Aglianico as well. So this kind of
if we talk about the sparkling wine, what is the perception of Prosecco going to Veneto? I know that we have a wine from Veneto in the bottle, so
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not as it is here. I've noticed, because I worked for a little bit of time at Cantina Isola here in Milano, and I don't mind Prosecco, like classic Prosecco. I think that there's like a bit of a negative perception on it. Maybe it's because I'm American and we come from a background of for the most part we do like Prosecco. Obviously, I want to drink a Prosecco with some complexity, and that's not not dull and boring, but it's not as it is here. I feel like there's more of a preconception that it's not the greatest wine, not the greatest wine region, but I would beg to differ. I find some very interesting wines coming from there.
Probably with I love the word traditional, so probably using the traditional style of Prosecco re-fermentation, you actually get super interesting wines.
Absolutely, just like Lambrusco. I mean, there's a long, for the past 30 years, the over-industrialization of that region could have potentially wrecked the reputation. But in this moment, there's something else that I think is really important about the natural wine movement in Italy, is that it's a bit of like reclaiming wines that may have been preconceived to be lower quality. Whereas Lambrusco is a fascinating world of wine in general.
Definitely. I remember when in the 80s the Lambrusco producers were actually making Lambrusco in a can, and it was super popular in the US. And
still is.
Yeah, it still is.
Regret to inform you.
Okay, so
it works though, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. But it's great that today there is someone, like you were saying, reclaiming their Lambrusco. So what Lambrusco really is, and you have so many different varieties and different tastes. It can be super acidic, it can be super fruity, so it really depends. But I know we have a wine from Veneto, so what do you think that right now the old style Prosecco is actually reclaiming? So is it like saying, this is what Prosecco is, this is what the region is, this is what re-fermentation is?
From my experience, I think in the world of natural and natural wine, the world of artisanal wine, yes. I can't speak for what's happening in the restaurant industry that's purchasing maybe more industrial wines from the region, but yeah, definitely. I think that's. What was it, about 5-6 years ago? I tried my first Costa di La, and that was already quite popular in the U.S. So I think that this has been happening for quite some time, and for our appreciation of this style. But not to mention too, I think this was one of the first from Italy anyway, one of the first natural wine styles to really popularize natural wine in the U.S. I think because of winemakers like Ernesto, holding a clear bottle, seeing how hazy it is, and the sediment floating in the bottom, and the glowing color. It was really fascinating for a lot of people. So I think the bottle itself sold itself, and people got really excited about it from there. So it's really interesting that this was actually, besides orange wines and the rest of the movement, that this was one of the, like the catalyst for international interest in these type of wines, because it follows the trajectory of like pet nats and stuff like that from France. So
and there's kind of like a gamification as well, because you actually taste the wine and it changes. Every glass is different from the other, or you can just turn it upside down and then you get more of a standardized taste in the glass. But it's amazing. I don't know much about this winery. I have to be honest, I never tasted it. So if you have any tips to say, it'd be great to hear it.
You wanna taste it first and then talk about it? Okay, cool, excellent. So that way we can kind of.
So which area of Veneto are we in?
This is in Vittorio Veneto.
Okay.
In a little hamlet called San Lorenzo.
Okay.
No. And they have they just opened up a agriturismo there called Agritour San Lorenzo, I think.
Okay.
And it's beautiful. I don't know if you've ever been to the Ace hotels in the U.S., like in New York and Portland, but it's reminiscent of like the Ace Hotel, but in Prosecco country. It's incredible.
Okay.
They collaborated with this architect and designer to make this very interesting modern space, beautiful like this, and it was really exciting to kind of see what they're up to up there. It's a really interesting story altogether.
Yeah, I think that wine tourism is fundamental for small wineries. I mean, they're getting people to really touch what you're drinking and all the work that's behind. So
absolutely. All right. Salute. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me.
No, it's super great. So what are the grape varieties that are used for this wine?
So I think that there's about 7 or 9. So we have Glera, of course, as a majority. Then there's we have Bosquera, Verdiso, Malvasia Istriana, also Prosecco Lungo. It's like kind of a mix, and even some of the more the autochthonous varieties from the region.
All super traditional. So
Exactly.
What it actually counts is more of the concept, the idea, rather than the single grape, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
It's I could say it's more of a breakfast wine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
It's super easy to drink. It's really nice. It has like you were saying, super nice acidity. It doesn't need to be complex at all, but it's just like drinkable. And also almost like getting your vitamins.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm I'm also an importer in the U.S.
Okay.
And so when I'm doing tastings with wines, typically here, because I live here all in Milano year round, I do like this 3 to 4 day refrigerator test, because we work with a lot of restaurants that may want to open a bottle and serve it the next day, which is, maybe we can get on this subject later, but in the subject of natural wine, there's many issues sometimes with stability of the wine, and so it's really important for us to have a natural wine that's good for some time at least.
And traveling is fundamental.
Exactly. And then one thing with like these metodo ancestrale style wines, like traditional style wines, sometimes they lose their bubbles after some time. This has I think that continues for through to the second day, which is quite nice, as long as if you keep it corked up. But what was interesting is actually when this wine fell flat, when it lost its bubbles, we were, like you said, breakfast wine. It literally had like this like a pineapple juice kind of flavor, which I don't notice now, and I didn't notice in the beginning. But it's just what a great wine when it can lose its bubble, but you can also continue to drink it and find it a good wine. I don't know. I found it very refreshing.
No, but that's super. I think that you start drinking wine with your eyes, because you just look at the color and it's amazing. It's catchy right away. And you were saying about pineapple, it already gives you the idea that you're going in that direction.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, it's juicy, but it has a nice freshness. It cleans your palate. You don't even need to think too much about the wine. You can just enjoy it, which is
in fact,
super, super great.
Yeah, which is what we did the day that we visited them last month. We enjoyed maybe a little bit too much of it. They have, because we also bought a bunch of magnums from them as well. And we opened one of those up with lunch, and then after lunch in the grass, we drank one of these 75 CL bottles, and then later in the afternoon, we had hit the 2015 vintage, which was his first production harvest, I think, under the name Col Tamarie.
So it's quite a new winery, actually.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, so it's actually, it is a new winery. However, Alberto has been. Alberto Dalle Croce is his name. He had been working as a farmer, as a grape producer in that region. In fact, selling grapes negociant to winemakers like Ernesto at Costa di La, I think for like 10 years actually.
Okay.
And so 2013, he tried his first experimentation with a friend from the Enological Institute of Conegliano, and did like this cryogenic maceration or something along those lines as an experiment. And the wine, it was just like an experimental wine. 2014-15, I think maybe he did like a blend of the two vintages to make his first Col Tamarie wine with the etiquette like this. And 2015 was the time that he met his wife, his now wife, and winemaking partner Marta.
Okay.
Yeah, and Marta's a fantastic person. She's actually making the wine now. She's like the winemaker, and he's managing the vineyards, the agricultural side of things. And so she studied also at the same. She studied enology. She's an ICE certified taster. Has this background as a sommelier, but then also after her working and studying wine for some time, she got really into homeopathy.
Okay.
So using predominantly homeopathic treatments in the vineyards, but also in the cantina is kind of a big part of their focus, which I know may come off, it can seem somewhat esoteric, but it's defined by science and by practical assessment. And I think it was really impressive that the depth of what they're doing there in regards to that. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a type of acupuncture, but in the soil. Okay. And so they're using like these crystals, essential stones, and elements inside of these poles, essentially that go into that are geometrically placed. Using ancient geometry throughout the vineyards. In the cantina, they use they play like ancient Indian instruments as well and stuff like that. So yeah. I mean, it's a fascinating thing. But I mean, in the end, besides having this really cool story and all that, they also make a very good wine, and it's a natural wine without sulfur added, without fining, any of the things that would not define natural wine. But even without sulfur additions, it stays clean without mouse or anything like that through through 3 days of staying open. It still manages itself.
It's super, super clean. I mean, you don't even have any kind of like oxidation, no mousiness, no breath, and it's super, super clean, super fresh even at the nose. And it's interesting what you said, the fact that they work in a really natural way, but they're really quality focused.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sometimes we forget about that, but it's really fundamental that then you're able to translate your philosophy into juice. And this is an amazing juice.
Absolutely, yeah. And they just made their first vintage of a still white wine, Vino Bianco, which is it's essentially the same type of cuvee, but still instead. Okay. Which kind of goes along with what I was saying about as it became flat, it was good enough that they wanted to bottle it also that way. So very excited to try that. This is let's see, what year is this? Is the 2019. So this went through 8 days of maceration. Okay. It's a very light pressing, but predominantly free run must. Okay. And then I think it stays in inox for 6 months. Okay. And then they leave it in after bottling. They use their frozen must to restart re-fermentation in the bottle. And then once it's in the bottle, they age it for a minimum of 6 months before even marketing the product. So that way they can ensure that it's a proper. It's really incredible how it's super, super fresh. So whenever the wine gets to US, do you kind of like need to wait for a certain period of time before being able to serve it, and how long does it take? It depends on the wine in particular. Usually, what we do is I have a partner that lives in Washington D.C.,
Okay.
where our base is, and he tastes the wine as soon as it lands, and we talk about it and decide whether it does need to stay some time in warehouse, maybe an extra month. Some wines are more sensitive than others, as you know. In particular, this one, no, as soon as it landed, it was fresh and ready to go. And we actually had 600 bottles pre-ordered as soon as it landed, which was really exciting. That was a first for us. Yeah.
Super.
Everything is usually by tasting, assessment and stuff. But we were able to find a bottle in the U.S. and taste it with a couple of our clients, and they put down big orders on it. And it's almost, honestly, it landed last week, and it's almost sold out of the 600 bottles.
I mean, I can understand why.
Yeah, and especially in this moment with the weather like it is. Yeah, everybody's,
It's super perfect. So, and I forgot to ask you, how many bottles do they produce?
Of this wine, they're producing, I think last year they produced 20,000.
20,000.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're going to get a big share of that to the US.
Yeah, eventually. Yeah, we started with just 1,200 bottles this time, but they're working with another importer in California as well.
Okay.
Someone in Washington State, I think, something like that. So spreading out. It was really interesting, actually, when we were their wine is kind of at this point almost in many countries, and we were there with our friend Lorenzo, who had noticed that their wine was on the list at Noma in Copenhagen, and it was super cool to tell them that, and they were like,
I don't know.
Like, what's that? I guess that's good. No, it's just very humbling, to kind of have to see that.
And it's great because there's still a lot of natural wine producers that are actually farmers. Yeah. And they have no idea of what is really happening in the world. They just make wine.
Yeah,
that's it.
It's not a bad thing. It's kind of beautiful, actually. Yeah, that's what I appreciate. They find other things to talk about other than all the things that are happening in the world all the time. So
they sometimes they get kind of like surprised because they're selling wine and they're like, okay, well, I got an order in Japan, and they don't really realize that the natural wine scene in Japan is so big. But
absolutely. No, it's exploding consistently. Yeah.
We always play around a little bit with the pairings, and we love to pair wine with pizza. Actually, pizza connection.
Okay.
So, I mean, the answer goes without saying, but how do you think that this would go with pizza?
Oh, it'd go perfect. I think it would also go great with a brioche, with maybe a tramezzino around 10 a.m.
It's quite gastronomic. I think this kind of wine, you can really use it on so many dishes, even without food. That's probably the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Just maybe some patatine in a bowl and pasta.
I think it would be really perfect, even like just a margherita pizza. So really traditional, classic, and it's just. Perfect.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, then, great. Thank you for bringing the bottle. It's been an amazing experience tasting it and hearing the story from you.
Yeah, thanks for tasting it. Yeah.
Super.